Steeler Nation, we are back for another great show today. And yes, we're testing out this live thing. It's been pretty cool to interact with everyone. So thank you for joining us. Tell your friends, your mother, your grandmother, uncle, aunt, whoever loves Steelers. But specifically today, with the NFL draft coming up, we have a very special guest. Uh, so let's bring him on. Ian Cummings, Pro Football Network lead draft analyst. Did I get all that correct?
Yep, for sure. Scouting analyst, NFL
Good.
draft analyst. I don't know the exact one, but it's one of those two. So
We'll just go with jack of all trades when it comes to NFL draft. We'll stick with that. But yeah, man, thanks for joining us. Like I said off fair a little bit, really appreciate someone like you who has such knowledge, with the draft. And it's the most wonderful time of the year. I know people are going crazy. My co-host Mike, he's been doing mock drafts since we were probably in like 5th grade, 6th grade. So really cool to be able to knock your brain today here on the Sick Podcast, Steeler Crazy. So we'll just jump right into it. Obviously, we're a Steelers, specific based podcast. The Steelers are picking at 20. Obviously, the Russell Wilson, Justin Fields signing, Kenny Pickett's gone. It's a new era in Pittsburgh. Omar Khan's just going crazy. Patrick Queen signing left. So we definitely filled some voids. But the number one thing in football, as you all know, is we win the game up front. So I really want to dedicate this because a lot of our viewers always, message me and I'm like, what do you guys want to talk about? So this is going to be dedicated to offensive linemen. The Steelers are picking at 20. You got guys like Zach Frazier, Jackson Powers Johnson. Is he going to be there? So like if you are the Steelers, hypothetically speaking, who are you taking at 20 to beef up that line? Obviously, with Mason Cole being released as well, I think if they would switch Nate Herbig over, then he would be. But right now, we don't even have a center. So just kind of touch on if you were picking at 20, who would you go with?
Well, it depends on if you're going for center or right tackle, because you could also get a tackle.
Yeah.
I know the Steelers staff is very high on Dan Moore Jr. I think he's more of a swing tackle. You probably don't want him starting abundant reps,
I agree.
right? So I think if you can get Broderick Jones to his natural position of left tackle, which he can play right tackle, fine enough. But if he's even more natural at left tackle, get a natural right tackle. So there are a few options. I think it depends on who's on the board. You have some of the top guys, like if Amarius Mims or Taliesin Fuaga is somehow there, that's hard to pass up, right? Because that can move over Jones to the left side, but you get a high level starter to the right side too. J.C. Latham, not quite as athletic, but I do like how powerful he is. I think he's really balanced on his pass sets too. So I'd like him at 20 as well. If you're looking at a center, JPJ, Jackson Powers Johnson, nailed the offseason process for such a young player. He's a really high IQ player, but he's also athletic, really strong, really well leveraged in pass protection too, and then really good blocking out in space. So I think he'd be a tone setter up front. But Graham Barton from Duke is another one who I think deserves a mention. I think he's got 5. Yeah, he's very athletic.
He's popping up everywhere lately on these Steeler mock drafts, so I'd love to hear about it. Go ahead.
Yeah, he's athletic, man. I think he had his pro day today, and he ran like in the mid 4.9 range. So you love to see that functional athleticism with him. But what makes him so fun to me is that a lot of the soft skills for offensive linemen come very naturally to him. Bending his knees, acquiring proper pad level, driving his lower body, and driving power from his lower body. A lot of things come naturally. He's a really good hand combatant and pass protection too. He's got 5 position versatility, but you can put him at center, and he can be a day one impact player. So if you're the Steelers, I think it depends on who's on the board, right? If one of those top right tackles is there, that's where I would lean. If they're not there, Tyler Guyton is an option as well. He's more in the 25 to 35 range for me, a little rich for him at 20. That said, he's got a ton of upside, 6'7", 325, 34-inch arms, really athletic, really flexible too. And I think that flexibility gives him kind of a mechanical fail-safe to help him withstand adversity. So I do think there's a lot of upside there. But if it's not Taliesin Fuaga or Troy Fautanu from Washington is another one. I really love his upside. He's very versatile too. I think he's a high floor guy, but a high ceiling guy too. He's got 6'4", 320, 34.5-inch arms, really good recovery athleticism and lateral mobility as well. So if it's not one of those guys, then I would probably look at center. That's where I'd pivot to center if it's not one of the top right tackles.
Yeah. And I think Perrin Mibbs, having another Georgia Bulldog, we already have, Broderick Jones. And, I kind of thought that he should have started from day one. I think that the Steelers kind of dropped the ball on that, but I know his potential and, watched his tape. And I think Mims would be, a great addition. And like you said, I think it all boils down to, we can sit here and hypothetically speak about all these guys, but it's really about, what players go, earlier in the where the things fall, with the quarterbacks and all that. So that kind of leads me to my next question. The Steelers did make some signings. But I still think getting after with Deontay Johnson leaving, I think that you got to get that solid number 2 guy, or at least someone that can kind of, step up. Obviously, George Pickens has potential. I think with a competent quarterback, he can be, a top 5 receiver in the league. I mean, just with his skill set. But we'll see how that goes this season. But just kind of talk about some of these sleeper wide receivers. We actually had, who I really like, and it's easy. He's more of a 4th, 5th round guy, Jalen Coker from Holy Cross. Guys like that you could just pick up, and this could be like, hey, maybe like the next Wes Wilker or someone along the type, not a come in and start, but like someone who could produce right away, but not maybe a superstar.
Yeah, for sure. And I think if you're the Steelers, there's multiple ranges where you can get a wide receiver in this class. Obviously, if you want to target one in round 1, I know we just talked about offensive line, but just to cover that base, like if Brian Thomas Jr. is still there at 20, like that's tough to pass up because he's so talented. But I think for the Steelers, for me, if you want to pick one in round 2 at 51, there's a cluster of receivers who are really good scheme fits, really good profile fits for them. Ricky Pearsall from Florida, Jermaine Burton from Alabama, Roman Wilson from Michigan. Those are a few that stand out to me because they love guys who
Roman Wilson's coming up on a ton of mock drafts.
Yeah, he's a
Roman
fun player,
Wilson
man.
is like every day I see him. Go ahead, talk about it. The floor is yours, man. You're the draft expert. We just want our viewers to come in, so we're loving it.
Yeah, for sure. Roman's like, the Steelers, what comes to mind for me is, they like guys who can separate, obviously, but they also want guys to be willing participants in the run game. And Roman Wilson, the motto for his tape is no block, no rock, right? Like, hey, he's out there, he's chipping guys. You love to see, those cracking plays. Like, he's got a lot to work with in the toughness and physicality standpoint. But as
we had a player like that named Hines Ward.
Yeah, there you go.
Like that named Hines Ward, if you recall. So. Yes.
That willing physicality is a big part of it. And then as a separator and an athlete, he reminds me a little bit of Chris Olave because, the way that he can run routes, it's, he can be surgical with his breaks, but he's really, really flexible and he can bend upfield while sustaining his speed and acceleration on breaks too. So I love that part of his game. Ricky Pearsall is more of a slasher as a route runner. He's so nuanced. He's got great zone awareness as well. Really strong hands as well. There was that one-handed catch last year that, had everyone up in their seats, and for good reason. I mean, his hand-eye coordination, his hand strength is up there near the top of the class, and then he's a surgical route runner too. Jermaine Burton is a guy that gets overlooked a lot, and I think, off-field evaluations will be big with him, how teams view that, but he's another really explosive separator who's got the speed to press into stems and manipulate DBs, but then also the flexibility to cut those stems and take advantage. And then he's got really strong hands too. I think he had one of the lowest drop rates among 2024 wide receivers. So that's the cluster of wide receivers at 51. If you want to go later, early day 3, Jamari Thrash from Louisville is one that I like a lot. Another really flexible player. Doesn't quite have the hand strength or the coordination, especially against contested situations, but another really flexible route runner, really nuanced, very manipulative against DBs at stems. And he's a really good rack threat too. He's crafty, he's nuanced and he's agile. Taj Washington from USC, if you want to go early to mid day 3, another one that I like a lot. A little bit leaner, a little bit lighter, but really explosive, agile, twitched up route runner who's got really good rack ability and enough speed and explosiveness to threaten downfield too. And then you get to the guys like Jalen Coker, Luke McCaffrey. If you want him on day 3, I'm a big fan of his versatility as well. The bottom line, if you need a wide receiver, this is the class to do it. So I think Pittsburgh's in a good spot.
Yeah, definitely. So let's kind of flip switch over to the defensive side of the ball. Obviously, when we traded Deontay Johnson, we got Jackson back, a cornerback from Carolina. So, with that being said, I've been reading up a lot on Kyrie Jackson, the cornerback from Oregon. Just kind of talk about him because I see him as like maybe like a 4th, 5th round snag that we can get. And is there anyone, any kind of diamond in the rough guys in the secondary that you see, 4th, 5th, 6th round that could go?
Yeah, Kyrie Jackson is definitely one of them. His range is going to be a little volatile because I could see him sneaking into the top 100 too if someone likes
Yeah.
him enough. I could also see him falling into day three. It's kind
That's
of,
what I kept reading. That's funny you
yeah,
said that because I literally just and I was like, wow, and here so it must be true.
it's tough to pin down a range for these guys, man. You know, you can kind of delineate where they might go, but every team's
Yeah.
board is different, so that's going to create some variance. That said, if he does fall to day three, I really like the physical combination, like you said, 6'3". I think he was almost 6'4". Actually, he was listed at 6'3"
Yeah.
in college and actually measured in like 6'3.5" or something. So a really long
That's
corner, really
crazy.
fluid for his size too. Has explosiveness, has vertical speed, really competitive at the catch point. I think he does have enough sinking capacity to hinge over those comeback routes and those deep outs too. So I think there's a lot to work with there. I think if he can, tone down some of the overzealousness that you see, the, extraneous physicality, there is a lot to work with. Playmaking upside is big. We know the Steelers like length at corner. Joey Porter Jr., case in point from last year. So I think he'll definitely be one to circle. Cam Hart from Notre Dame is another one who I think fits that same range. Not quite as fluid as Jackson, in my opinion, but I do think he's a little more explosive. I do think he's a little more physical and tenacious in run support. He definitely makes himself felt. He's really good at kind of encumbering blocks and deconstructing and making himself felt at the tackle point as well. Needs to improve his playmaking ability and consistency at the catch point, but the tools are there again. And then one more that I'll throw out there, Elijah Jones from Boston College, one of my favorite sleepers in this class. He'll be a 25-year-old rookie, so a little bit on the older side, but I think right away he can hit the ground running as a solid starter on the boundary. He played the slot a little bit too at Boston College, but the key word with him, man, is explosive, tenacious, feisty, really, really good route recognition, very good in man, off man, or zone, and competitive at the catch point. He's a playmaker. I think he had 5 interceptions, 8 pass deflections this past year. So really, really quality player who I think will fall because of his age and some injury issues as well.
Mhm.
But he's a starter in my opinion.
All great stuff, man. I just love hearing you talk because you're just so well versed with the draft stuff. So I appreciate everything you're doing over there at the Pro Football Network. But hey, one more thing before I get you out of here. Obviously, we talked about it earlier with the signing of Justin Fields, Russell Wilson. Joe Milton for some, I think he just met with Cleveland today, which everyone's meeting with everyone. I don't really like, put any stock into it. Is there like I don't think that the Steelers would, but if there was like a sleeper quarterback for this draft that, maybe take a chance on that could just even, be a second or, third string, I guess, it's either Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. Who is someone like a Joe Milton, or is there anyone else that, obviously like guys like Drake May and they'll be gone, but I'm saying in the later rounds. I know we keep talking about the later rounds, but I think that realistically in Steeler land right now, I think we know we have to address the offensive line, specifically the, tackle position and center. But what would you, if you had to roll the dice and say, hey, we're just going to take a shot on a guy, and even if he's cut, bring him to training camp, but just see what you got. Is there anyone, that you would personally pick that would maybe fit for the Steelers?
Yeah, this QB class is unique because some years you have those developmental guys in the middle rounds. I don't think we have quite as many this year. Joe Milton, I wouldn't take him until round 6 or 7,
Yeah.
and even then, I'd probably spend a PFA, try and let him hit the PFA market. He's got a
Mhm.
really strong arm, and he's got really good
Yeah.
straight line athleticism, but the processing ability on tape to me is not at an NFL level. I think there are a lot of delays on reads, and not very many full field reads. I think a lot of it isn't translatable to the NFL level. So he's one. If you can get him in the PFA pool, yeah, I'd take a swing on it. But, if I'm looking at round 6 or round 7, the middle round guys, you have high floor players like, Michael Pratt from Tulane, Austin Reed from Western Kentucky, Keaton Slovis from BYU, who started his
Yeah.
career at USC, could be a round 7 flyer.
He
tested
also
very
played
well.
at Pitt for a year.
Yeah,
Keaton did.
he played a Pitt
Yeah.
for a year. Yeah, it didn't go very well, but he
Yeah, it
was there.
didn't.
He logged some reps, and I think he tested well. I think he's healthy now. He had some shoulder issues in his career,
Yeah.
so he had a good Shrine Bowl week. So he's on the rise. I think round 7 could be an option for him. But for the Steelers, if you're going with athleticism, because they got Russell Wilson, Justin Fields, I think you want a guy who has mobility, so you can insert him into the scheme. Two
Yeah.
guys that stand out to me: Jordan Travis from Florida State.
Yeah.
His season ended prematurely with that injury, but he's a leader. He's a little bit lighter. He doesn't have a great arm, but he's very agile, really good corrective mechanics, really twitched up athlete. And I think he's got good accuracy in the short and intermediate ranges too. And then Jason Bean from Kansas. He doesn't get a ton of hype, but he's a phenomenal athlete. I think he hit over 23, 22 miles an hour in a straight line this past season. So he's an athlete. He can run, but he's got a solid arm as well. And I think there were some pretty exciting flashes of anticipation over the middle field. So a late round flyer for sure, but I think he's one. I'd get him in that room. He's athletic. I know I can run with him, and then he's got some upside as a passer too. So Jason Bean, Jordan Travis, probably the top names that come to mind.
Yeah, I kind of honestly forgot about Jordan Travis, just maybe because he got injured. But I'm a Pitt guy, so I watch ACC network all the time and catch a lot of their games. And he had some stuff. I will say that. But maybe the injury, that's maybe why. But yeah, like you said, people that have that dual threat, like a Justin Fields, I wouldn't even be surprised. Obviously, Russell Wilson's in the pool position, but you talk about packages, new offensive coordinator. You never know. I mean, this is like new times for like Steeler fans. It's been like, the consecutive non-losing seasons, and then like Omar Khan and Mr. Rooney are like, we've had enough. We're flipping the table. Like it just got cutthroat. And it's not that it's cutthroat. It's like these guys are getting paid millions of dollars. If you're not producing on the field, it's like, hey, we're here to. I know in Pittsburgh specifically, Russell Wilson said you walk in there and there's 6 Lombardis. We're trying to get the 7th. That's the mentality here. It hasn't been for a while, so we're hoping that with these drafts. I mean, even like last year kind of allude to that, like getting Joey Porter at 32, and everything just worked out. So if Omar Khan can do, another, it's going to be hard to top last year's draft. But like you said, this draft literally has everything that the they need. So really excited. And I know, everyone in Steelerland is as well. Hey, before we get you out of here, 2 things. Tell everyone where they can find you, where they can read your work, check out everything you got going on. And I again want to appreciate you coming on. Love having guests, and I know our viewers will as well. So thank you guys for hanging out with us, and especially you, Ian. But do you think that how deep and realistic do you think that this Steeler team is? I know it's still early, like to give a decision, but do you think this could be like a AFC championship team, or do you think it's 500? Like, what if you had to? Because we always like to ask people who, we have local guys on, and it's all the same narrative. Like we like to, when we have guys on like you from the outside looking in, just give that take and tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the roster again because I always try to stay up to date with it. Every month I do a mock draft.
Who is your team? Like, do you have a?
So I grew up in mid-Michigan, so I grew up watching the Lions. But then I was a big Kirk Cousins fan when I first started out, like when he was in Michigan State. So he went to Washington. So I'm kind of Lions, Washington. I try to stay objective, though. I try to.
As long as you didn't say the Browns, we're cool.
Exactly.
As soon as you said, I was like, you're getting close, because a lot of people like. But yeah. Anyways, that's great stuff. Yeah, Kirk Cousins. I was hoping obviously the price tag on him wasn't going to happen, but there was rumors going around. I mean, the rumors are just at this point. I mean, it's been insane. This has been I think we can both agree on this date right now that this has been the craziest NFL offseason since I've been alive.
It's been one of them for sure. It's up there.
Yeah, definitely.
But to the Steelers, I think you got to add some more talent in the secondary. I think Dante Jackson had some decent years in Carolina, but was kind of trailing off as of late. So I think you still need to add more. I think you need to strengthen that offensive line as well. The defensive line, I think, has a lot of good pieces. Keanu Benton was really good as a rookie. I think T.J. Watt, Alex Highsmith, Patrick Queen, alongside, if Cole Holcomb can get back to 100%, I think they kind of complement each other pretty well. You want to get some more weaponry in the receiving core as well. Van Jefferson is a solid veteran, right? Calvin Austin, I liked coming out, but again, he hasn't proven a ton right now.
He's more of a gadget, like it just didn't do it for me. I mean, and it was weird. The first year I remember I was up at training camp, and that's when he got injured. And I'm like, what is their plan with him? And like they try like these little play, and he's shifty, he's fast, but it just didn't pan out. So
yeah. So my take for the Steelers, you get a playmaker, a vertical playmaker, ideally one of those 3 guys at 51, Pearsall, Jermaine Burton, or Rowan Wilson, right? You get an offensive lineman in round 1, you beef up the secondary later on. You got Minkah Fitzpatrick, Deshaun Elliott's a solid veteran, a strong safety who can complement him pretty well. I think they can get to 8 or 9 wins again. I think the main ceiling evaluation is how does Russell Wilson play? Because in Denver, the stats were a little bit prettier than what he showed on the field. He wasn't wasn't a great fit for the Sean Payton offense. You know, I do think he's lost a little bit of the juice that made him so special early on in his career. That said, Arthur Smith, I think you're going to stress the field vertically a little more. I think it's going to play a little bit more into Wilson's strengths. So we'll see what happens. I think it ultimately depends on how Wilson plays. If he can, you know, experience kind of a resurgence, maybe they can get to 10 or 11 wins. But I think right now I'm looking at this team 7-9 is kind of what I'm looking at, because the AFC North is starting to get stronger again. The Browns are still a really good roster, even with the quarterback questions. The Bengals are going to have Joe Burrow coming back. The Ravens, right? So it's not going to be easy again, but I do think Mike Tomlin's proven he can keep them competitive.
Yeah. Well, we appreciate getting, you know, an outsider's take. I know that our viewers will really appreciate it. And again, thank you for coming on, and just tell everyone where they can check out your work and what you got coming up next.
Yeah, for sure. You can find me at IC_draft on Twitter or X. I'm going to keep calling it Twitter. I can't stop.
I still call it Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. So that's where you can find me at IC_draft. Any draft questions you have, feel free to send them my way. Pro Football Network is at PFN365. That's where all the content is, scouting reports, rankings, and our mock draft simulator, which we will continue to update in the lead up to the draft. It's going to be a good ramp up for sure. We got one more month. So until then.
I was going to ask you, do you have like a guy like you that does like, or do you sleep during this time? Like these 2 or 3 months? Yeah, that's
I try to. It's tough sometimes, but you know, it's the grind. We sign up for it, but we've gotten to the point where most of the work is done. We just got to see it through and cross our T's and dot our I's, and we'll be good to go.
Yeah. Well, hey man, really appreciate your time. Best of luck and keep up the great work. I know I love reading it, and I know all our viewers now can check it out. If you have your draft questions, Ian's your guy. Thanks again, man.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. Appreciate it.
Yeah, like I said, when you have guys like that are just so well versed in the draft, just really love to knack their brain, and I know our viewers really appreciate it. Shout out to Mike; he's at opening day. Hope you're enjoying yourself. Yeah, I mean, things have been overall good. I'm just kind of being optimistic. I personally think that the Steelers are going to win more games, because last year we won 10 games, and you've seen, well, Mason Rudolph, I wish him the best of luck in Tennessee, because honestly, like, that man is just true class, and he really did that resume he put together at the end of the year was great, and it really showed that, hey, here's a competent quarterback. And I think that Russell Wilson, I think that he was doomed from the start in Denver. So I really think that this is going to be a resurgence for him, and he has something to prove. Obviously, he's not playing for, the paycheck anymore. This is, he has something to prove and wants to go out on top. So, and adding Justin Fields is even better, because he can learn off of him. Something that Kenny Pickett should have done, but obviously didn't go as planned. But hey, we really appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Really excited about the NFL draft. We're going to be having some prospects coming on, so make sure you subscribe to the Sick Podcast, Steeler Crazy. Remember, we go all year round. We do not stop. We try and sleep when we can, but the most important thing is giving you guys the best content and the best podcast this side of the Allegheny on the one and only the Sick Podcast, Steeler Crazy. I'm Jay York Football. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you guys soon.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Steelers Crazy on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.